Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week I talk with Carrie Kleinberger, an artist who has a gallery show currently on display at the Hopkins Center for the Performing Arts. We talk about the inspiration for this exhibit, what led her to a second career as an artist, and how her Judaism is infused in her work on this week's Who the Folk podcast. But before we hear from Carrie, this podcast is supported by the Afternoon School and Midrashah at the Talmud Torah of St. Paul, offering online supplementary Jewish education for students in grades 2 to 12. Great Jewish education from any location. Now enrolling for the fall. Learn more at ttsp.org/as-m. Carrie Kleinberger, welcome to the Who the Folk podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Well, and thank you for inviting me because we are actually sitting, this is one of the first in-person of these I've done in quite some time. We are sitting in the Hopkins Center for the Arts looking at your gallery exhibit up close from a distance, which is hanging up here at the Hopkins Center for the Arts at 11th and Main Street through June 19th. So I guess for starters, congratulations. These are 28 unbelievable portraits.
Oh, thank you.
That you've created.
Yeah.
So I guess let's go back to the beginning of where this concept came from. Where did you sort of dream up this particular series of paintings?
Well, what I've written in the introduction and artist statement, which is right at the gallery on the wall, it sort of encompasses the whole feeling of what moved me to do this. It was when COVID struck, especially in March 2020. We were told by our kids, my daughter and my son, that we needed to stay at home. It was very, very distressing to me. This was distressing to everybody. But we had to isolate at home. After 2 months, I just said I can't stand it anymore. I needed to get back to my painting in my studio on Summit Avenue. So we got permission from a family member who's a doctor and a nurse, and they said it was okay if we went to the studio. There I was able to paint, but I realized I couldn't bring any models. I had been taught in my art school, the Atelier Studio Fine Arts, School of Fine Arts, that you use natural environment, you have a model in front of you. I couldn't do that. No one would come up to my studio. I wasn't allowed to have anybody else up in the studio. And so what I did is I used photographs to bring my family, to bring my friends, to bring anybody that I really cared about closer to me. And I decided to paint them. It would bring them even closer and have a more intimate relationship that way. Mm-hmm. And I painted them, as you can see here, very large, up close, very intimate, as though something that was not allowed by COVID in reality. I could never talk to them that close, not without a mask, not without some sort of separation. Here I could, and that meant a lot to me. And that's how I weathered a lot of the COVID time.
So 28 pieces of work here that were all created over the course of the last almost 28 months.
That's right, yes.
Is it, to me that seems incredibly fast to put together work this detailed. For starters, I have zero artistic training, so maybe it's not very long. But is that an unusual pace for you to work at?
I do a lot of paintings at once. I paint usually at my studio 8 paintings. I have 8 easels up, and I do 8 paintings because I'm a nervous painter. I get scared. Sometimes I start a painting, I'm just thinking, I don't know what I'm doing, I can't do this. And if I stand there and force myself to paint, I'm paralyzed. So I'll move to another painting, and I relax. I can go back and forth. I can go to a third painting. So it's not unusual for me to do many paintings at once. This group went fairly quickly. I'm amazed myself at 28 paintings to have them done. I did work very, very hard. It was almost with, it was the passion that this was a release that it gave me. I could go paint. I could do something that made me happy during this very difficult time.
Are painting portraits like this, is that sort of your artistic specialty?
No, I do everything. I'm
Okay.
all over the map. I have portraits of pets, I have landscapes, I have waterscapes, I have beautiful still lifes, I have beautiful florals that I do. Anything that I see, if it strikes me as beautiful, I want to paint it. My husband is constantly laughing at me that when I walk down the street, I want to take pictures of everything because it's that, oh, I can make that into a painting. It's so beautiful. So I do everything. This was just something because I missed socializing. I missed being with people. I missed being with these people. And this was a way of overcoming that sense of loneliness and sadness.
I think, I know it hits, that sort of loneliness sort of hit everybody differently. I mean, everybody is sort of in different stages of life, right? So
Right.
I had 2 kids around the house all of the time. I couldn't be lonely if I tried.
That's wonderful.
Sometimes it was. Sometimes
Yeah.
they needed, but they also needed that outlet. So like
Yeah.
that sort of loneliness hits them in their own ways also.
Yes.
So, as you showed your work to the people who, sent you pictures or who were, personally featured in some cases, I know your daughter and son-in-law, you pointed out to me, are in a couple of pictures. How did they respond? How did the subjects of the work respond when you show them the finished product?
Most of them were very happy, very pleased with it. I think almost all of them that I could show it to really did appreciate it and love it. It meant something to them. It was not just me reaching out to alleviate my loneliness and sadness, but they had sent me sometimes these photos in a way of trying to reach out to me, to others. Mm-hmm. And to have a portrait done of them that others would see was very gratifying and made them feel appreciated too.
You mentioned, learning in art school about, having actual models in front of you, and obviously this was a time you couldn't do that, but was art something you had always wanted to go to school for?
I always loved art,
Okay.
But my family, my mother and father, did not encourage any of their 3 kids to do anything but become doctors or lawyers. That was the rule. I have one brother who's a doctor, and I have another brother who's a lawyer, and or at least went to law school.
Okay.
And I became a lawyer. I was a public defense attorney in Ramsey County and in Washington County.
Wow.
For over 21 years. So that's what I did.
Okay.
And then 2001, my job sort of dissolved from underneath me. And my husband said, do something that makes you happy. As public defense attorney, it's not always a happy job.
That's a tough job.
Yeah, and it was especially, this was parents' rights, parental terminations, dependency, neglect. You go home and you hug your kids. Talk
Yeah.
about having 2 kids.
Yeah.
I would go home and hug my kids and want the world to be better for them. And lack of paying child support, very sad situations. So I said, okay, I'll do something that makes me happy. And I liked art, and I played around with art a bit. And the teacher that was handling these weekly fun art classes said to me, I think you should take this more seriously. You have something, a talent.
Wow.
So he suggested I go to the atelier, and that's what I did. And I went there for 4 years and graduated in 2013. And this became now my second career.
Wow. That's fascinating. See, it's never too late to start something
No, it never is.
or different.
No, it never is. It's amazing.
It's fascinating. So back to this particular exhibition here in Hopkins, how did it come together? Obviously, the works came together fairly quick, but when did, I guess maybe not necessarily specific with this particular show, but really any show, how do they come together? How do you reach out to galleries? Do the galleries reach out to you? I guess what's the process?
Well, that process is one where, I'm still trying to learn how to do that, let me tell you.
Okay.
This was a wonderful, amazing opportunity. I have a promoter and an advocate and close friend, Joy Wolf, who worked on this. She saw this series. She said, this really should be up in a big gallery. It's a very large exhibit. And she talked to Jim Clark here at Hopkins several times and invited him to my studio to see the artwork in person.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a wonderful conversation at the studio, and after that, I was able to work out a time with Hopkins to show the show. Those are difficult things, though. They don't come often, and we really had to work at that.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a tough world out there.
I would imagine. I mean, and obviously, you know, if people are familiar with the Hopkins Center for the Arts, the exhibit is on the street level, the main floor of the gallery.
That's right.
On either side of the doors into the Stages Theater.
Right.
So it's a very visible space, certainly.
Yes, you can even see it beautifully from the street, especially at night when it's lit up here.
Oh,
wow.
But that's really
Yeah.
pops.
Yeah, it
And
really
there's so
does.
many vibrant colors in a lot of the paintings too, so I would imagine that really would, really nice visibility there.
Well, when we put it up, you could see people were
that's
outside the window looking in.
Catches people's attention right away. That's
Yeah,
pretty
it does.
fantastic.
Yeah, it's very good for me, and it's very good for Hopkins Center for the Arts.
Yeah. So once sort of the arrangements were made and it was set up, was how it looks now, is it sort of what you envisioned it would look like?
No, I had no idea what it would look like. We had many different ideas. We thought a timeline, you know, when I first started the paintings and then going through to the very last. We just put the paintings all on the floor initially to see what called to us. That was really all we could do. I thought it looked like chaos. I was very upset. But slowly we started to build an exhibit. And then it started to fall into place. It was amazing. We started with one painting, which is sort of the face of the exhibit, the one captivating, and then bookend with another black and white. That happens to be a black and white. We bookend that group of paintings with another black and white, and then the colors and the features. Sometimes the subject matter seem to come together and work together into what we see now as a very beautiful, and it sort of has a nice flow to it, exhibit.
Yeah, I mean, that to me it feels like a whole different level of how you sort of build the wall to make it look a certain way or tell a certain story.
Well, very much, again, my promoter, Joy, did all that. She has a wonderful sense of color, of style, of the interior designs. She knows how to do that.
I mean, you also have a wonderful sense of style and color,
Well,
if I can say, by
thank you.
looking at these pieces, but obviously how you arrange an entire collection like this on a wall is very different from how your mind sort of envisions it as you're putting it on canvas.
Right, exactly.
So one of the other series that you had mentioned as we were walking through before we started recording was Women of the Bible?
Yeah, Strong Women of the Bible.
Strong Women of the Bible.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about that series and how that came about. I'm curious sort of from how your sort of Judaism is infused in your work in that way.
Well, it's very much infused into it. I have begun studying Torah with a Rebbetzin, and I've been doing that for many, many years.
Okay.
Chabad Rebbetzin, wonderful friend of mine. So Torah has become more and more, I feel I'm becoming closer and closer to understanding and learning about Torah and appreciating Torah in my life. Having grown up in a very secular, Reform Jewish home, I'm becoming a little more religious and aware of the religion. And it means more to me in my life, practice it more in my life and my family. So I have that, and we have more friends who are a little more religious in their practice than we are. And so it's just something that has become more evident in my life and important in my life. I started to do a few paintings of women, it turned out, because I had a wonderful model who I thought would make a beautiful model for Rachel, or for Leah, her sister, or for Sarah, which she did. And then it just sort of burst into, exploded into a much larger series. being a feminist, I also felt that strong women were important. These are examples in our own Torah, in our studies, our own religion, of women who have overcome very difficult times. Also, times just like we have, ordinary times. It's all the same. We're so much alike. And we can learn a lot from them, not just by reading the stories, but also imagining how they would handle things now, how we can learn from them, how we can learn from the Torah. So I have a series that I call Strong Women of the Bible, where I have started paintings of what I imagine Yocheved, the mother of Moses, going through as she's about to put Moses in a basket.
Yeah.
Who does that? Who's going to put their baby boy into a basket and put it in the Nile River where the crocodiles, and that's it. It's crazy. And I tried to capture that feeling. I luckily have wonderful models, a family, a mother who just had a little baby boy, and her daughter, who I posed as Miriam. And I have Miriam comforting Yocheved just before she puts Moses into the basket. I have also other paintings that I'm starting, or I have started little color studies of Rachel when she's told that she cannot marry Jacob, her love, that her sister has to marry him first, and she's to pretend that she's Leah at the wedding. I have a painting of Leah. I have a painting of Ruth and Hannah on the steps saying prayers. All these I saw as important moments where the women showed their strength and how they managed to overcome very, very serious and difficult times.
So is that an ongoing series?
It is.
Okay.
It is ongoing. Some of these are small paintings like color studies. I have Miriam looking up, a young Miriam looking up. She's going to be talking to her parents saying, "Your decree is worse than Pharaoh's." And I have her young with talking to her parents. All I have right now is just her face. So, but this will be a large painting.
Okay.
These are, I have Yael in mind, many different scenarios that I have in mind for larger paintings, perhaps 30 by 40 as I've done here too.
Okay. Which is what a lot of the paintings as part of the exhibit in Hopkins is.
Yes.
30 by 40. So obviously there are some that are a little smaller, that are square, some that are larger and more vertical.
Yes, a couple.
A couple sort of fit that bill.
Right, right.
But it's
These are fairly large, though, pieces.
yeah. And like I said before we started, like you're trying to create a picture this large off a 5x7 photograph. It's pretty.
Yes.
It's no easy feat.
Right, right.
So is there a exhibition possibly in store for the Strong Women of the Bible?
I hope down the road there will be, yes. But I still have a lot of painting to do in that one. There are so many women that I want to
Right.
paint.
I mean, that's sort of the thing. Is there are really a ton of important women.
Yes.
In the strong women in the Bible who should be featured in something like this.
Yes, and there are amazing stories and amazing aspects of their stories that I can put onto canvas. I think it'll be extraordinary, but it takes time. So.
Well, that's excellent. Well, I think it's great for all of us who love art that you got tired of being in the law.
Oh, I wasn't tired. It just dissolved. It was
time to be
right.
Find something that will be better.
Right. Yes, that's very true. I was very lucky. My family supported me in doing this, and continue to support me in doing this. It's not easy, and it takes me away from the family a lot. But it's a passion now of mine.
That's excellent. Well, last couple questions, and we will let you back to the studio, I guess.
Yes, I am going back
to create more. What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Well, I like Pesach the best. That's my favorite time because it's such a family time, and I always had my children with me. Now, as they live in L.A., they live in East St. Paul. It can be harder. People have different calendars, but to me, it still is a family time, and I love the foods, and I love getting people all together. Of course, COVID has cut into that immensely. Sure. Doing Zoom Pesach was just not the same.
No.
but
Were you able
we
to
did
get
it.
everyone back together this year?
We did not.
Okay.
We got some people back,
Okay.
but we actually, Dan and I, my husband and I, we went to a friend's house for Pesach. As it turns out, Pesach was difficult for Rachel to come. My daughter, she had, what happened there? I can't remember. I know that they just had COVID and they just got over COVID. So traveling is a difficulty from LA, and it can be risky. We're not quite at the point where people can come and travel easily. So we went. It was wonderful. We had a fantastic Pesach like we'd never had before at Friends for both first and second Seder. But that is my favorite holiday.
Excellent. Speaking of foods, what is your favorite Jewish food?
Wow. I don't know. I love Israeli food. Whenever I go to Israel, which we try to do every year. We haven't with COVID.
Sure.
But we're planning to go this year. It'll be right before Yom Kippur.
Okay.
I love the Israeli salads. They're so fresh and tasty, and it's flavors you don't have here in Minnesota very often.
That is very
I like the more unique flavors, the spices and such, so that's what I like.
Excellent. Well, Carrie Kleinberger, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for inviting me to come see your gorgeous exhibition.
Oh, well, thank you for
Up
coming.
Close from a Distance is at the Hopkins Center for the Arts through June 19th. Thank you again for joining us, and mazel tov on your work.
Well, thank you very much, Lonnie.
The Who the Folk podcast is part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network, a product of Jew Folk Inc. Please subscribe, rate, and review the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you have suggestions for other podcast guests, please email them to me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. For our other shows, check out tcjewfolk.com/podcast.